Chapter 11. Sawyer got up early. She had given instructions to the staff to have breakfast and coffee laid out for the guests before they left. She found them hard at work and started helping them. Julius and Marcus came in about an hour later as the first guests were starting to depart. Sawyer was kept busy replenishing breakfast items, and Julius was busy helping people with their luggage. Finally, Simon, Paul, and Harlow made their way downstairs as the last guests were leaving. They sat and ate together and laughed. Sawyer smiled to see them together like this. It had been too long. It wasn't until nearly 11 a.m. that Sawyer realized she hadn't seen Hannah or Derek yet, which meant the Sterlings hadn't left and she was ready for them to go. Harlow, would you run upstairs and see what's taking Hannah so long? I'm sure the Sterlings must be anxious to be on their way, she asked. Harlow rolled her eyes at the interruption and said, "Fine." She threw a napkin on the table and left. Julius came into the dining room. "Well, that's everyone except the Sterlings and the Furies. They're refusing to leave until the Sterlings leave and are just waiting by the door," he said, frustrated. "I know. I told them they could stay. It can't hurt anything," Sawyer told him. "Are you kidding, Sawyer? I thought they were going to attack Stephen last night. And you don't think it can hurt anything?" he asked incredulously. "Oh, they were definitely going to," Paul announced, confirming his father's thoughts. "Let's not exaggerate the situation. I'm sure they weren't," Sawyer told them both. "Besides, they're committed to Paul's safety, and right now I appreciate that. Just so you know, they told me how they began their attacks, and that was totally the way they explained it. If I hadn't have stopped them, Stephen would not be leaving here today. I do appreciate their concern for my welfare, though," he offered diplomatically. Julius opened his mouth to say something else, but Harlow was running down the stairs, screaming for her parents in panic. They rushed to the foyer, and she was waving a piece of paper at them as she ran. "What is it?" Sawyer yelled at her in panic. "She's gone," she said as she reached them and handed them the paper. Hannah had left a note explaining the situation and begging them not to be angry or freak out. She said she would be back soon. Sawyer sank to her knees and Julius rushed to her. She let out an awful moan and said, "This is all my fault. I should have told her the truth," she sobbed. Julius helped her back to her feet and stood her facing him. "No, we all agreed it was for the best," he told her reassuringly, not wanting her to bear this burden alone. Hearing Harlow screaming had brought Liam running. The Furies were by Paul's side before Harlow could even hit the landing. Within seconds, Cassia, Lucas, and Mother were there to see what was happening. Julius explained the situation to everyone, and Marcus suggested they started making a plan. Sawyer looked at him and said the plan was to find Hannah and started for the door. She flung both doors open and ran outside. What she saw stopped her dead in her tracks, leaving her frozen at the sight before her. At least 500 soldiers dressed in full combat gear had surrounded the front of the house, and all of them had rifles pointing directly at her. She knew there would be more on the sides and at the back of the house. To their left stood 2 covens of witches, and directly in front of the fountain stood Lisa and Stephen. The family had chased after her, and they all stood frozen at the sight now. Everyone was too shocked to move. Stephen held up a hand and spoke. "Don't be alarmed. We aren't going to hurt you," he said calmly. "How did you do this without any of us noticing?" Sawyer asked, shocked by the sight in front of her. Lisa laughed a dry, cruel laugh. "Your party. Everyone was so distracted by cars coming and going. We knew from the first time we sent people out here that sneaking up on you was impossible. Your party was the perfect cover we needed. So many heartbeats that your husband couldn't hear them all. It was genius, really," she said. "You understand that we can kill you all," Julius threatened, readying himself for the battle. Stephen rubbed his temple impatiently. The headache had been growing all night and nothing was helping. He couldn't even remember how much aspirin he had taken in the last few hours. The buzzing headache was making his temper turn foul. "Yes, that's why we took Hannah. If Sawyer comes peacefully, then we will return Hannah unharmed." "Well, for the most part unharmed. Derek has grown pretty frustrated over the last year with her incessant neediness. And young men will do what young men do," he said. "What mother wouldn't trade her own life for the life of her child?" Lisa asked, cutting off his ranting. The Furies began to laugh. Your life is already forfeit. We can see the madness buzzing in your head already, and soon you will claw out your own eyes to make it stop, they said mockingly. What have you done to me? He yelled at them and grabbed both sides of his head. We have unleashed your insanity. It buzzes freely inside of your own head now. Soon it will consume you and do what all insanity does, destroy. They said cryptically about what was going to happen. Make it stop, he begged. Why? We didn't make you this way. We can't unleash what doesn't exist. You should have sought to contain it long ago, but instead you let it grow like a cancer. You fed on it, and now it feeds on you, they said, unconcerned by his obvious pain. Never mind that now, Stephen. We'll fix whatever this is when we get back to the facility, Lisa reprimanded him. Would you like us to release yours? The Fury asked her. Do not threaten me, witches. I brought my own for just this reason, Lisa told them furiously. The Furies laughed a bone-chilling laugh. Celine had come out of the house to see what all the commotion was about and froze. Sawyer knew the situation was getting out of control quickly, and she just wanted Hannah back. I will come with you, but I want Hannah back first, she told Lisa. You will be reunited with her at the facility. She will be released when you are secure, Lisa told her. Julius grabbed Sawyer's arm and whispered to her, You can't go with them. You know their plans for our children, Sawyer. They won't let her go. You have our word Hannah will be released, Lisa said loudly, knowing what his whispers meant. Your words mean nothing, Julius told her. Maybe not, but what choice do you have, Lisa said. I can kill you where you stand and then destroy your facility when I retrieve my daughter, Julius answered, looking at her with deadly intent. The situation was reaching a boiling point. The soldiers had their fingers on their triggers, and one of them had only to twitch their finger and it would explode into a war. Simon interceded and said no one would be going anywhere. He snapped his fingers and Hannah stood at his side now. He caught her as she almost fell. She had been shielding herself from another one of Derek's blows when she appeared by Simon's side. She was crying and bruises were already forming on her face. In the next second, Simon snapped his fingers and Derek appeared next to Lisa and Stephen. He was holding the strap he had been using on Hannah and looked around shocked at suddenly being here again. He let his arm fall down by his side and knew they were in serious trouble now. Simon put his arm around his sister and said soothingly, You're safe now, and she wrapped her arms around him and sobbed. Sawyer just stared at her son, stunned by what she had just witnessed. How? She asked him. She comes now. Everything will soon be clear, Simon said, and looked past the shoulders of the soldiers toward the garden. At that same moment, a huge doorway appeared behind the soldiers. This doorway was bigger than any of them had ever seen. It had double doors and must have been at least 50 feet tall and 50 feet wide. It was made entirely of gold and glinted in the sunlight. The double doors slowly swung outward, opening. Everyone was so stunned that even the soldiers turned to see what was happening behind them and pointed their guns at the doorway. A young woman appeared and began slowly walking through. Two black panthers on either side of her kept pace. They were so black they looked almost blue, and as they walked, every muscle in their bodies rippled. The young woman didn't look like she could have been older than 17. Her hair was as black as the panther's, her ivory skin only highlighted by the vibrant violet of her eyes. Her clothing was made entirely of tiny gold chains. So little of her lithe body was left to the imagination. She walked towards them at a leisurely pace, seemingly unaware of all the danger all around her. Her mannerisms and the way she walked indicated that she was a very ancient being. She looked toward the fountain and it began to change before their eyes. Lisa and Stephen, terrified by the sight, ran to stand by the witches. It began to morph into a platform with stairs leading up. On the top of the platform, an ornate throne began to build itself. When she reached it, it was complete, and she began to ascend the stairway. When she reached the top, everyone unexplainably bowed to her. Everyone except for Simon. He stood erect and understood he was her equal. When she sat, they all stood up again. The panthers sat on their haunches beside her, and she stared directly at Simon. The silence in the air was complete. Not even a bird could be heard. Everyone stared at her speechless. She put her hands on the arms of the throne and spoke to Simon. I'm the Immortal Taya. and I have come for you, young immortal. I am Fae, Simon told her. No, you were born to Fae, but you are not Fae. You are a very rare young immortal. You are natural born, she told him, while her face remained expressionless. What is natural born? He asked, tilting his head slightly to the side, confused. Most immortals are created by the gods. Few, like you, are born to mothers and are not created by the gods, she explained. So you were created by the gods, he asked, starting to understand. Yes, she answered. It was Mother who boldly pushed her way to the front of the group and spoke first to the immortal. Why have I never seen your kind before? She asked suspiciously. The young girl looked at Mother and tilted her head very slightly and sat forward. Old Mother, you have seen me before. I banished your Arrhenius when your power wasn't strong enough, she answered. If this is true, why don't I have any memory of it? Mother asked, searching still for the elusive memory. Taya sat back now. I am not a memory that can be kept. My name is lost to the ages. Mortals all stay on the edge of memory and can't be recalled. After this day, I will fade from your memory again, like all of the others you have met before me, she told him. What others? Mother asked, shocked to be hearing this. I assure you, old Mother, I was the last immortal you met, not the first, she answered cryptically. Now she turned her attention to the Furies and sounded annoyed when she spoke. Why are the three of you here? I told you to never return to the human realm, she asked. The three of them looked terrified as they spoke. We protect the male Fae. He is pure of heart, they answered. Impossible. Only children are pure of heart, she told them. Look if you don't believe us. He is pure of heart, and therefore we are bound to him, they told her. Taya stared at Paul for a moment, and he began to squirm uncomfortably under her gaze. What does pure of heart mean? He asked the Furies. Pure of heart means you seek knowledge only for the sake of learning. You do not seek it for power, they answered. Taya looked back at the Furies now. He truly is pure of heart. How odd, she mused. His bloodline is meant to protect this realm, the Furies informed her. Gaia has done well with this new bloodline, she continued, still without any emotion, and pointed at Mother. I told her when she created this one that you would be unprepared to deal with the humans. How could you know this to be true? I was created when first man walked on the earth, before anyone knew what they would become, Mother said challengingly. Taya turned her full attention to Mother now. You were created when this species of man first walked, but countless numbers of men have walked before this one. No matter what species rise among the humans, the result is always the same. Empires have risen and fallen in vast numbers, long before your first man walked, she told her. Now, she had piqued Paul's interest. Do you mean like Neanderthals or Denisovans? He asked boldly. Yes, and many more that can be named. Their bones lost to the dust long before those you named, she answered. Ghost DNA, he said, although no one knew what he was talking about besides Marcus. You are inquisitive. Yes, your ghost DNA comes from a species lost to time. She answered, staring at him again until he became uncomfortable. What is ghost DNA? Asked Simon. It's DNA that can't be identified from any known species of human. It exists in humans today, but no one knows where it came from, Paul explained to him. Simon looked back at Taya now. How old are you? He asked. I no longer have an answer to that, but I was born when the continents were all one. I lived in the dense forest area that you now call Antarctica. When I was a child, it was warm and lush there, year-round, she answered. Were you human once? Simon asked, stunned. Yes, all immortals except for natural born are changed by the gods at the moment of their death, she answered. How were you changed? He asked. That will all be explained when you come with me, she said, expressionless, and then turned her attention to the humans surrounding her. She turned her attention to Derek first, and her expression became one of disgust at the sight of him. She stared at him for a moment and then turned back to look at Hannah, who still stood at her brother's side. She saw the bruises on her and how she cowered in the safety of her brother. He had tried to quietly slip away from the crowd when everyone had become distracted by her sudden appearance. One of the panthers had stood up and stared at him until he became motionless again. She stared at the pathetic young man. It was not enough for you to break her heart. You decided to slake your demon's thirst by hitting her, she asked. What? I don't have a demon, he answered, confused by her words. I was only doing what I was ordered to do, he said weakly. She leaned forward to speak to him now. You are the weakest of men, saying you are commanded to do unspeakable things, and yet you enjoy doing them. You indeed have a demon's heart, and you feed its lust for pain. I shall send you to where all demons are, and you will understand soon enough what it means to be fed upon by those whose appetites are never satisfied, she said, and waved her hand slightly at him like she was swatting a gnat away. Darius became a stone statue, frozen with a horrified expression at what she had just said to him, frozen as he tried to turn and look for somewhere to run. She turned her attention to the crowd surrounding Simon and his family now. She let her gaze fall upon the witch's laugh, and then turned back to Simon. Why do the humans and the daughters of Seraphim threaten you, young immortal? She asked. Still, she remained expressionless. Simon had noticed quickly she showed no emotion when she spoke, and the disgust she had shown Derek was the first emotion he had seen from her. She seemed unconcerned about everything else. She obviously had no fear of the men holding guns or the witches. Daughters of Seraphim, he asked, confused. I forget there's much you don't know, young immortal. Seraphine is the immortal who gave her blood to humans and sired the witches. All supernaturals are sired from immortals. Your father is sired from the immortal Dagon. Now tell me why they threaten you, she asked. They want my mother, he said. For what, she asked. To open a doorway to another realm using her power, he said, giving her the quick version. She raised an eyebrow at the thought and turned to the witches. I had forgotten how stupid the daughters of Seraphim were. You do not possess the power to open a doorway to a different realm, you fools, she told them. We do not, but the humans do, one of the witches answered meekly. Now her eyes fell on Lisa and Stephen. Lisa stood defiantly, but Stephen had his fist to his temples and was grimacing in pain. In all reality, he had not taken in any of this. The noise in his head had drowned out everything else, and he didn't comprehend anything happening, just the excruciating pain in his head. Taya recognized the Fury's handiwork and looked over at them for a moment before turning her attention back to Stephen and Lisa. She flicked her hand slightly, and he disintegrated into dust right before their eyes. Lisa watched in horror as the dust became caught in a breeze and simply floated away. She lost all her defiance. Taya looked at her now and asked, Is this true? Do humans have the power to open a doorway? Lisa looked at the young girl and could not comprehend what she was. Yes, but we need Sawyer to open it. What will you do when you have the power to enter a new realm? Taya asked, already knowing the answer. We will look for technology and new resources, Lisa stammered, the stock military answer. No, you will look for weapons and you will wage war. Your species always seems to think you can take what you want. You think you can open doors that aren't meant for you. Besides, Sawyer is not a witch. She is Fae, Taya told her. Impossible. Fairies do not exist, Lisa told her disbelievingly. I assure you many things exist that you know nothing about, humans. Unfortunately, everything you've learned today will be for nothing. I am protector of this realm, and it is my duty assigned to me by the gods to protect human life. How terrible for you that a new immortal is more important than my duty to you all. You will all have to die this day, Taya announced, as unfeelingly as if she had just said an ant must die. You must protect humans, the Furies asked angrily. Yes, this is their realm. When Gaia created the Fae, it was to help protect them. When you three turned to Dark Fae, it was my duty to stop you. No supernatural being is allowed to interfere with the humans unless they are destroying the planet, Taya answered. Why do you protect them when all they do is destroy, the Furies demanded. Simply because this is their realm. I watch over them like cockroaches swarming and destroying everything in their path. They build their empires and they wage war. One species kills themselves off and another rises to take its place, and the madness begins anew. You have your own realm and they have theirs, Taya said, and shrugged slightly. If you're supposed to protect us, then why are you saying we have to die? Asked Lisa despairingly. I have come for the young immortal, and you're interfering, Taya answered. We will leave, and you won't have to kill us, Lisa offered desperately. I don't mind, Tia said coldly and flicked her hand. They fell like a line of dominoes, each turning to dust and blowing off the wind as it was picked up. All that remained was the statue of Derek. She looked at Simon now and said, Are you ready, young immortal, to understand the power you possess? Simon looked over to where 500 men had just stood. He saw the stone statue and the dust blowing gently in the breeze. He was in awe of the power she had just demonstrated, and he nodded his head at her.